Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Okay, it's my pleasure today to introduce to you Reverend Musho. I might have to check with you, Musho, about pronouncing Podulke? Podulke? Pretty
Pretty good.
close?
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Podolke,
Podolke. Podolke. Okay,
Polish.
Podulke-Smith. He completed the Upaya Buddhist Chaplaincy Program in March of 2023. He took up Tokudo uh, ordination under Reverend Onryu Kennedy later that year. He works with inmates at the Federal Medical Prison in Rochester and leads a sitting and study group also in Rochester. So Musho, we're happy to have you here, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say to us today. Thank you for
Thank you.
joining us.
Thank you, Jokai. Can you hear me okay? It's a phone isn't clacking. So, yeah, thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here. And thank you for joining. And, in our little group, we sit here in Rochester at the UU Church, and our format is usually to read together and then discuss a text. And we've been kind of climbing our way through lots of foundational texts. We looked at Nagarjuna, some selections from the canon first, Nagarjuna. We've been reading Dongshan, and particularly the song of the Yule Samadhi, Tokyo Zanmai, and then the the most, maybe the most famous story from Dongshan is a story that demonstrates his central teaching that you take from Dongshan, the teaching of suchness. Story, you probably know it. A monk asks, "How does one escape hot or cold?" And Dongshan says, "Why not go where it is neither hot nor cold?" And of course, the obvious question: what sort of place is neither hot nor cold? But when it's cold, you freeze to death. When it's hot, you swelter to death. That's William Powell translation. I see other translations that don't put death in there so squarely. So just some context. Suchness is clearly something that a doctrine that
Oh, did have we lost video? Okay.
Musho, you're muted.
Oh, oh. Musho, I think you accidentally muted yourself. Okay.
That better?
Yes. Okay.
There we go. Okay. Yeah, there's a problem with my headset. So I can't hear you very well. but when I need to interact, when we need to interact, speak up, and I'll catch it hopefully. So Dongshan, suchness. Dongshan comes from he's I'd say a founder of the Soto tradition, one of the founders. Squarely in that what they call a Tang Dynasty classical Zen period. I think his dates are 9th century, 807 to 869, and student of Yunnan, but he also studied with other formative teachers, important teachers, Nanchuan and Baizhang, I believe. No, his teacher studied. Anyway, he studied with lots of Guishan, and so our tradition, the Soto Chaodong tradition, follows straight through him. His name is in that Chaodong label, and this notion of suchness as an expression of Buddha Dharma, I think, or practice, is squarely in our tradition. And Dogen reveres Dongshan maybe more than anyone, and the notion of suchness can be a little hard to put your finger on. I think that we could say that putting your finger on it is the practice. Like, how do I live in this place where I'm free of attachment, free from ego, free from the trouble of the world. And I think that's the question. It is aiming at suchness being Buddha Dharma. It's problematic, I think, for us, since we clearly live in a world of particulars, a world of hot and cold. And it seems, especially now, things are getting very hot. It's very hard, at least for me, to just sit here and be still with all that's going on. I mean, they're rounding up people in Home Depot parking lots. This is not some far away remote thing that I can ignore, really. And I don't think I should ignore it. But yeah, they're rounding up people, shipping them off to detention centers. They just built this huge detention center in Florida, if you see, the so-called alligator Alcatraz. And then in this new bill, what I think is $45 billion allocated for new detention centers. That's money that is going to go to states who volunteer to set them up. Florida did it even before they allocated the money. So, it's all the groundwork is paved for a lot of heat right there. A whole machinery of repression. What is it? How many thousand? 10,000. They're looking to hire 10,000 new ICE agents in the next 4 years. It's like a whole new military apparatus is being wound up, and it's and it's not for other people. These are just people that are putting our roofs on our houses and picking our vegetables, or here in Rochester, people who are doing research, medical research. it's hot, and there's a whole machinery of outrage that fuels this, you know. Um, I guess I don't have to keep going about the reasons we should be outraged, the reasons that things are really, really crazy, and it's hard, and it is hard. Well, the question, how can I avoid hot and cold? It's a pertinent question. It's not. Dogen says a quiet room is suitable. Set aside all cares and affairs. Well, how do I do that? How do I set aside rounding up people? How do I set aside what's going on in Gaza? I mean, those are our tax dollars bombing hospitals. Okay, it's not just heat; it's increasing heat. The carbon in the atmosphere is like something like 15%, 20% higher than it was just in our lifetime. So literally the temperature's going up, more floods, so on. And at the same time, there's cold. I mean, it seems like we're drowning in indifference. We can't seem to get our shit together to oppose these things. They're cutting medical funding, and the way that they did it is just skating on a kind of film of indifference, like well, things will probably work out, or it probably won't affect me personally, so maybe I'll be okay. There's a kind of apparatus of indifference that's being laid down, or we're surrendering to a kind of chill, where we're afraid, and afraid is a kind, I think of as the cold. I'm just I'm gonna hide out here and hope maybe I can ride this thing out. Here in Rochester, I see it, the large institution, which I won't name, is clearly facing huge cuts. They're it's hard to say how much, but it's clear that research funding, attacks on the immigrant visa system are going to cause huge problems. Just at a time when they're investing $6 billion on a new medical center. They're not saying a word. They're afraid. The largest employer in the state is afraid. They don't want to stick their head up. You can see what happens to institutions that have stuck their heads up. Universities and large law firms and media companies who are attacked. So that's the hot and the cold. That's where we're asked to practice. And so what sort of place doesn't have hot and cold? Where can I go? A quiet room is suitable, but it's not quiet. There's plenty of noise. And so Dongshan says, when it's cold, you freeze to death. And when it's hot, you swelter to death. I don't think he's talking about us being a sucker for punishment or going into it, or that we need to put ourselves on the front line. I don't think that's it. I mean, obviously, this is open to interpretation, and you can have your own you can have your own view, but that doesn't look like it to me. I think he's talking about practice. Like, where do we find our stillness? Where do I find our foothold in this situation, the world of hot and cold? And that's suchness. The place where we go is the place where it's happening, not necessarily there where it's spiritually. How do you connect? How do you really fully connect with the hot and the cold? Our practice is not a separate being practice. I'm not practicing just myself here. I'm practicing with the whole world, with the whole suffering world, the hot and the cold, and submitting it myself to it fully. So I think that's where he's going. But obviously, the whole style here is, I think, and this is a hallmark of our tradition, and part of why I think it's so beautiful and so necessary, particularly now, is that it treats us like adults. It doesn't offer the clearest answer. It's not a political program that Dongshan is offering here. It requires some work, I think, to tease this out, to understand this. You need to bring yourself fully to just these phrases. And in that way, I think it resists the kind of reductionism or fundamentalism that I think all religious programs or political programs too, can fall prey to. We need to step up and not just look for easy answers, but to go for things that require some effort. And I think that's throughout this tradition. Certainly, when we've been reading the Song of the Jewel Mirror Awareness, it's a tough nut to crack. It's really like 30 nuts, each of them with a different kind of texture and there's a long bundle of footnotes, that attempt to tease out what's going on in these stories. And I think that's a strength of our tradition. I mean, it's what makes it very different from most of what you see out there. Instead of bringing it to people, you have to go to it. If you are going to try to establish a practice of suchness, there's no billboards that'll give you a 5-point, bullet points of how to do that. You're going to have to dig through ancient Chinese literature and try to find the connection between these seemingly simple and confusing, literally confusing phrases, and take it up as study in your your own life. So I know it's a hard sell. In fact, it's no sell at all, right? This is a practice that you need to bring yourself to. And so it makes sense that there aren't a lot of people clamoring to do it. It's not on the list of the algorithmic things that are going to be sent to people. So where do you go to avoid hot and cold? When it's cold, you freeze to death. When it's hot, you swelter to death. So I think um, to practice right there in the hot, in the cold, is not, it's, I mean, to start with, to think about how is my practice in the world. You know, it's not something that happens just on the cushion. It happens while I'm moving around doing my life. And suchness, if anything, is about the interconnection of things, about the boundarylessness of this world, which is not different from selflessness or egolessness, which is also part of suchness. Suchness, I think, is connected as well to non-duality. So breaking, looking for a life that is somehow rooted not just in the world of form and particulars, but also in the world of interconnection, where I am not separate from all things. The two sides, two aspects of reality, form and emptiness, are not two separate things. There's only one world. There's only one place where we practice. So all of that is suchness. And as you can see, that sounds like some heavy philosophical concepts. And so it is tricky. And our language, how we talk, is based on a kind of dualistic structure. Subject, predicate, object, you know, even subject and predicate. You know, I sit. There's a dualism in there. So that's why I think, you know, we have to employ language carefully, or make sure that we don't attach too tightly to any particular language or phrases or words. I think from the Julamir Samadhi says that words don't touch it, but a pivotal moment brings it forth. I mean, just to describe it in literary form is to stain it with defilement. So suchness is it's tricky in that way. We obviously have to say something, you know. We have to speak to each other, but we shouldn't think that you can get one particular set of words, or even any complete you know, large opus of words are not going to nail it down. It's rooted in your practice, in your experience. Taigen Leighton's book on suchness and Dongshan, which is a really great book, I would recommend, is it's called Just This Is It, Dongshan and the Practice of Suchness. And he describes, he's got a very I'd say literary or scholarly approach to describing these things, but he's a practitioner as well, and Taigen says that suchness is the moment. You know, it's really not separate from Dogen's practice enlightenment. You know, practice and enlightenment are one. Buddha nature and enlightenment are one. Um, and so there's no way to just lay it out so easily. And I think that's why Dongshan's style and the whole uh, literature around Dongshan and through much of our tradition is kind of slippery. It's, I see this with people when we study together. There are some people who naturally take to it, who say, "Oh yeah, it's paradoxical, it's difficult, it's knotty. I love it." And then there are other people who are like, "Geez, can't you just say what you mean?" um, um, and I totally respect that. If you think we should just say what we mean, I do think, yeah, we're trying. We're trying to say what we mean. It's just that it's not, it's not so easy. You're saying form is emptiness and emptiness is form, but those are not two separate things. Um, there's no world of emptiness that I'm going to go to, suchness itself isn't a thing, it's not, it itself is not a separate place where there is no hot and cold, despite what Dongshan says. So this sort of slipperiness, this sort of coming at it from the side is the hallmark of this tradition. It's what makes it seem so hard. And I don't think it is necessarily hard. It's hard if you're trying to hold on to your normal way of thinking. It's not that there's no logic here. It's that the logic is this logic based in suchness, and it's not foreign. It's not strange. It's not elsewhere. It's presence. It's presence itself. So even just the phrase "just this is it" is which I think sums it up very well. It comes from Dongshan's Enlightenment poem, where he says, everywhere I go, I meet it. Just this is it. I am not it, but it is me. So I think that it comes very close to right up to the edge of the limit of language, where I am not it, but it is me. That sounds like a tautology. It sounds like those are the same things. A equals B, therefore B equals A. But he's saying A equals B, but B does not equal A. So what's the difference? I am not it being suchness or Buddha Dharma or freedom from the hot and cold, but it is me. In the first, the subject is me, the small self. In the second, it is me. The subject is suchness. The subject is Buddha Dharma. The subject is Buddha. It's enlightenment itself. It's practice enlightenment. So it is me. How do you get your head around that? And I think this is it's similar or almost the same as Genjo Koan, where Dogen says to carry yourself forward into experience is delusion. But for the world of 10,000 things, experience itself to bring up you, that's enlightenment. The subject isn't me, the small me, the me that I carry around, that experiences hot and cold. The subject is the hot and the cold. The subject is the 10,000 things, the world of experience. I think that's suchness. The what is it called? The record of Dongshan is full of stories. I think there's 100 or 108 stories. Most of them these very short dialogues, and there's a good reason, I think, that they kind of proliferate like this, because if you hold on to one too long, or think that this is the way, then you're probably off the mark. So they tend to proliferate. There's a whole spirit in that proliferation, I think, of this kind of open hand towards stories that keeping this creative flow of suchness alive. And you get the sense, particularly from this literature, that it comes out of a community. There are dialogues between students and teachers, or even between teachers, and it's something that we can support each other with, and maybe we need to support each other with it. Otherwise, you're just kind of lost by yourself. So, yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to say about Dongshan. It's a little bit of a tumble, but I would encourage you to look at Taigen Leighton's book, also the Powell record of Dongshan. They're available on the Terabest website as PDFs. But if you buy Leighton's Taigen's book, then that will definitely help him financially. I think they're looking for a new place. They lost their place in COVID, and I don't think they have a new home yet, and that's unfortunate. Chicago is right here in the middle of our country, and it needs to have a strong Zen presence. So maybe I'll just, if there's anyone has any questions or anything about the little story that you'd like to bring up, I would like to hear it.
Well, thank you, Musho. I'll make a comment. Hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. When I think of that story, too, sometimes some versions are a little violent.
Right.
Where's the place where there's no heat or cold? Well, the cold kills the monk, and the heat kills the monk. It sounds a little dramatic, but the way it's not really like that. I don't think it's we could say when it's really hot, you get hot. You're hot. And when it's really cold, you're completely cold. Um, a lot of times when I experience some difficulty in sitting still, I explore what that difficulty is. And if it's really hard, I ask, okay, I'm going to see if this is going to kill me or not. Well, so far it hasn't because I'm still alive. So some of the things I imagine that are really hard aren't really quite that hard. But the killing part is where our ego self dissipates, and where there's nothing that we can see or experience where the heat is separate from us. You know, like I'm hot. It's just like there's just heat here, and there's just cold, and you just have to go into the middle of that and not really try to find an explanation for it. It's just, if we search for an explanation or a rationale, it still keeps us separate from what the actual experience is that's happening. Whether it be really, really difficult or really, really pleasant, you know, it's just two sides of the same spectrum. So in some ways that story's not all that violent to me. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't think he's talking about violence or submitting ourselves to violence or
no,
seeking it out in any way
no.
or even harm,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
No, I mean maybe the death is a kind of surrender, like surrendering to the conditions in a way
Yeah,
as it relates to my clinging mind.
yeah.
But there is something uh, I think in the use of violent language sometimes that um, gets to um, you know, people say the radical nature, but maybe it's the strangeness of this kind of approach, that it does take some what seems like heroic or impossible effort. You know, it's an effort beyond effort, and that can seem totalizing. And I think the language of violence touches on that. Um, yeah, there's maybe less in the Soto tradition than in the Rinzai tradition, where they kind of hold up this sort of heroic sword swinging kind of attitude, and I think that that's not our way. The one of in the Song of the Jewel Mirror Awareness, he says, um, um, what is it? Forget. Um, the like cowering rats, and that we're cowering inside. That there's this notion that inside there's this struggle, like, but let go of the struggle. You know, I think that's the death that he's talking about. This kind of struggle.
I think he also it's kind of a shock for us. Like when this kind of language is used. For instance, another one, similar one, is when you meet the Buddha on the road, kill it. So he said, what
Mm-hmm.
the heck does that mean? But it's don't create an idea what Buddha is. So just if and I think that's what it means when you meet the Buddha on the path, which means a kind of a kind of awakening or something. Don't attach yourself to that. Just let it go and keep moving along.
Right.
That's kind of what it means. But we need to like explore that story first because we're kind of shocked by it. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Because it, I don't know who said it first, but but it was not a common expression before somebody said it first. They're just trying
Yeah,
to
that's right.
wake people up about getting too attached to what Buddha is. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. And I there's something about the texture of of that sort of talk where it's rough and um swords are swinging around, that I think suits that's part of this practice. I think that's part of um of any spiritual practice. I mean, that's what that's a jihad, not I think it misinterprets it to make it an external act of violence, most definitely. But we need to bring our full selves to it. There's a kind of courage, supreme courage that it's calling upon. It doesn't. I don't think it's going to come to you. It's not. It's not going to happen if you wait for it to happen. You need to bring yourself fully to the practice, and to bring yourself fully is going to require some serious um, um, digging in. You know, I think that might be what he's getting at, and all that whole kind of language. The whole, in the Japanese tradition, there's this kind of upright directness that tries to embody, I think, a posture towards the whole world. That's suchness. That upright posture is an expression of suchness, and there's something kind of defiant about it. Defiant as it relates to lying down, you know, to be upright moment by moment is a kind of uh, challenge all by itself.
Musho, you talked about people dealing with the paradoxical language, and some people embrace it, and some people just wonder, why can't we be more direct? And my late wife often asked me, why do they make it so difficult? And I was asked that more than once, I'm certain. And I think I would be able to explain things a little better now, but I'm not sure I would ever be able to really come across. So what I'd like to talk about is this idea of the surrender of the building of trust. I mean, this is kind of the goalless goal, but why should we do that? Why do we think that's a worthwhile thing to do? How can we? Why do we build that trust? So uh, I have a sense of it, but that's the thing that's so difficult to convey, I think, is why should we trust in this egoless, so-called egoless state? What it's like, what's it gonna do for us? Which is
Yeah.
which is
What good is it?
completely ego
If it's
bound.
a hard thing, yeah. Yeah. Right. You could say faith, but that's just begging the question. Like, why should I have faith in this practice?
I think trust is a better word than faith in this case, because
Uh-huh.
but I think that's kind of the core point of the whole thing. So
Yeah. So what do you think? Like why you practice, you sit down and you know, you do this thing. Where does that trust in you come from? Like why do you why do you submit yourself to that?
I'm not sure, but I read there's an article thing from Norman Fisher says people who do zazen only the only reason they do zazen is because they love zazen.
Hmm.
And he says people can think that they're like my friend Dave Bress brought up the thing that Shokin used to talk about. Oh, are you here for personal enrichment?
Sign me up. Yeah.
And it's not about personal enrichment. So Norman Fisher says, well, if you think that you're better because of Zazen, that's just your imagination.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
that's a concept. That's a paradoxical smack. And at the same time, he's saying the only people who do Zazen is only because of the love of Zazen.
Yeah.
So
One thing I would um um what this makes me think of is um well, for one thing, we don't know what all of what's going on in ourselves. I mean, I think that it's pretty clear, at least in my experience, that much of what I do and think and say, I believe that I'm choosing these things, that I'm choosing Zazen, but I don't think that's totally true. I mean, there's this huge part of what what's going on, even in my personal experience, that that is not subject to my knowledge, or my choice, my volition. And I think that's what Freud discovered, in a somewhat scientific sort of context. You can see that people are doing things and acting out dramas that they're not even consciously aware of. It's like there are other people inside of us who are moving us around sometimes, and we're not aware. Um, but also from I think a Buddhist point of view, my life isn't just my life. This is part of a whole story that's much wider. I'm just a tiny piece of 20th, 21st century, um, you know, culture and life and the world, my family, and uh, all of this is acting acting through me, you know. I don't uh I like the idea, and it's to me, maybe it's just what gets back to trust, like you say, but I like the notion, and it appeals to me a lot that that Zazen chose me and I didn't choose it. That a commitment to practice is not something that I put together out of my own wherewithal, and because of my experiences and so on. That somehow it it existed before and chose me. You know.
I think there's something to that because if you talk to people who've done this for a long time, they and you ask them about their first experience, there was some kind of connection even with the first time. they sat down,
Yeah.
and something happened, and like, we don't know what that is, and I've had periods of time where I've kind of given up on Zen centers and kind of gone away from practice for a while, and it's like it comes back because you start to miss it. You start to miss this something in your life, and it's I think Katagiri Roshi used to talk about something like tugging at your robes. You can try to walk away from Zen, but Zen won't go away. It'll just tug at you. So
Right. Wow. Yeah. That's nice. There's the notion of self-practice and other practice. And I think Taigen talks about this, but also something that one of the first things that appealed to me about Zen when I was reading Alan Watts back in the day was that sorry, this might be loud with all our sirens, but the notion that you have to bring yourself to practice, you do the work, but also there's a way that if you surrender yourself fully to the work through your doing, that you can let go of your own doing and let the doing, be the doing all by itself. That's the other practice. In the other forms of Buddhism, it's maybe more they come at it the other way, like Amida Buddhism, where you're surrendering yourself to the Buddha, and there's nothing I can do to make, there is the practice is just the simple surrender, and I think that there is this notion that self and other, that's a dichotomy that we live in, but that's the thing that we're trying to pierce through or see through or live without, like in the language of hot and cold, so yeah, when I just surrender to practice, it's not me surrendering anymore, it's the practice doing it. There's other practice. It's the Buddha practicing, and that sounds kind of mystical, and I like that. I think it's okay to let a little mysticism leak in, just as long as I don't attach to it too much, and think that I'm having what do they call flowers in the sky, it's a bunch of fireworks. But it's part of surrendering is to let it happen, to trust in Buddha nature as a thing that's somehow totally inside of me, but also totally outside of me. Yeah, it's tricky.
I'm reminded of something I'm quite fond of that Dogen said. He said, realization is only helped by the power of realization itself. So, it doesn't matter what we think about what's happening. Unlike what you said, I think you said, Rushin, if I heard you correctly, is if I heard you correctly, you said the first time you sit down, something happens. Well, it wasn't that way for me. Well, I don't know what happened, but I just kept doing it. But believe me, I didn't think anything at all was happening. And I don't know why. But what I believe Dogen is saying, we can sit, and usually we have to sit for, quite vigorously, but we can experience something, while we're sitting, or shortly after we're sitting, or something like that, by which we experience something. We don't know what it is, but all we know is that, yes, th- this is what people are talking about. But, that's our intellectual mind starting again. So it's like we just go back, and then based on whatever we realize, we just keep working with that. And we're getting down to the end here, and I'd like to just tell a little anecdote. When Rushin said that his wife said, "Why can't they just make it simple?" I remember I was visiting Rushin and Sandy, his wife, at their house many, many years ago, having dinner, and Rushin and I started talking about pain during Zazen. And I remember this situation. I remember where I was at the table, where Rushin was sitting, where Sandy was sitting, and we were going on and on about, the pain. Yeah, it's so good for concentration, though. We going on, and Sandy, his wife, said, "Now, how is that?" How is that? And I remember I didn't have an answer for her, and I don't remember that Rushin did either. But so anyway, I've always remembered that little story. So I thought maybe I better come up with an answer if I'm going to say why pain is really good for Zazen. But now I don't actually believe that anymore. So maybe she kind of woke me up a little bit about that.
Well, I think that sometimes, isn't it possible that being all gnomic and paradoxical can get in the way. I think we should accept that maybe it's not always suitable to every situation and every person. It's not. There's no one way to do this, whatever it is. It reminds me of there was a great story I just read with so Dongshan's teacher Yunyan. The interesting thing about him is Yunyan was this sort of embodiment of not getting it, which is kind of great. The whole system of the lineages and the passing down is based on one person gets it, he passes it to the next who gets it, and so on. But the insight between Dongshan and Yunyan is that Yunyan maybe didn't get it. Of course he got it, but probably he didn't too, So some of the stories turn around that notion. Did Yunyan even get it? Whatever it is. When somebody asks you, Dongshan, why do you revere your teacher so much? You studied with all these great teachers, and Yunyan, everybody knows, he wasn't so great. And Dongshan's reply is, well, the best thing about him is he didn't explain everything to me. That's the root of our tradition, really.
Thank you so much, Musho, for your talk today.
Great. Well, thank you. Thanks for the chance to think about these things together.
Yeah, let me go over a few things that's in the future here for Hokyoji. Next week's speaker is So-san Flynn, the guiding teacher of Clouds and Water Zen Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. And it'll be the beginning of a 7-day retreat that she's giving her talk. So I'm not sure yet if that's broadcast through Hokyoji or through Clouds and Water. But you can go to the calendar, and there should be some direction about how it might be through Clouds and Water that you will get to that Dharma talk, not Hokyoji. But I don't know the answer to that right now. And other upcoming events are August 9th. We have a traditional retreat here at Hokyoji called the Jewel Mirror retreat, and we'll be studying guidelines for studying the way by Dogen, and that will be led by Daigaku Rume from Confluence Zen Center in St. Louis, and by Reiren Gumbo from Milwaukee, and myself. And then August 19th, there's an MZMC retreat, and that one you do register through MZMC. And then also there's a Compassion Ocean retreat on August 25th, and also you would register through Compassion Ocean for them. But kind of a busy July and August here down at Hokyoji. So that's what's going on. And why don't we close now with the 4 vows. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Okay. Thank you all for joining us, and
Thank
hope to
you.
see you next week. And thank you so much again, Musho. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a great week.
Yep.